Hello everyone, and welcome to our session today on Lanham EDI Setups. Joining us today is Valerie Ingersoll from Innovia Consulting, and we're excited to have such a fantastic turnout today. Before I pass it over to Valerie to cover on this hot topic, I would like to remind you that this session is being recorded and it will be posted to our on-demand webinar library for you to review and share with anyone. And if you do have any questions, please feel free to type those in the questions box. We will get them answered during our Q&A time at the end of our session. And so now I will pass it on to Valerie to kick off our presentation.
All right, thank you, Angie. Yes, my name is Valerie. I have been with, I'm a senior development consultant at Innovia. I work on the support team. I've been with the company for about 16 years. I specialize in EDI, eShip, and financials. And today I'd like to cover some of the basic EDI setups in NAV, and those are Lanham's EDI setups. So it's a huge area. I'm just going to be covering some of the common areas that I work with. But then if there are any other topics or questions that people have at the end, we can cover those if we have time as well. So what we'll be covering today are EDI Ins, EDI Conditionals, list fields, resending an outbound document, and then sending the BOL number on the 810, which is sometimes a request by trading partners. So first, one common question may be, how do I send a value received on the 850 back to the trading partner on the 856 or 810 without bringing it into the sales order? So the 850 is the inbound document, the sales order that we receive from the trading partner. And sometimes they have a request that we send back that same value back to them on the 856, which is the ASN, or on the 810, the EDI invoice. And we may not need to bring that value into NAV and into any of the tables anywhere. We might not need to store it. We might just simply need to bring it in, store it someplace, and send it back to them. So in those situations, there are two options. You can use the EDI In, or you can use the NAV table that Lanham created called EDI Received Doc Header Info. There's actually another one for the lines to EDI Received Doc Line Info. So I will just show you briefly like where that would be set up and how that works. All right, so we are going to go into the EDI menu, administration, trade partners, and I found one that is set up that way, so I'll go into that. Let's see here, overstack. So I'm going to go into the documents. So it would first be set up on the 850, the inbound document. If I go into segments, and it's in the BEG segment, so I'll go into elements. And notice on this third element here is where we're going to set this up. So where the EDI In would come into play would be in the origin field. In the origin, you have different options. You can either pull into a Navision table. EDI Out, those are used for outbound documents. EDI In, which is what we'll be looking at, and then SDQ, which has to do with 856s. So you would choose the EDI In, and then once you choose that, then that would change the display that you see when you go into the field name. And Lanham has some stack options for you to choose from. So you can choose any of those that would be the most fitting, or you can also go to a new line at the end and add a new one that, and then give it your own description that is kind of describes the piece of data that you're bringing in. So you would choose that. So in this situation, we have assigned ID. So then when you import that 850, it stores it into, it's kind of like a variable or holding place for that value, for that document. So then when you go to the outbound document, so in this case, it would be that they want it sent back to them on the 810. You go into segments, and they want it sent back on the BIG segment. So it'd be elements. And then whichever element they want that sent back in, which in this case would be the fourth one, you would again choose EDI in for the origin and that same EDI in value, which is assigned ID. So that value comes in, and then when you send out the 810, it has that in its memory and it sends it back out to them in that same element. So one thing to keep in mind though is I believe you can only use like the assigned ID in one place for both the inbound and the outbound, or there could be some confusion there on what value is imported or exported. And then another thing to keep in mind is you can set up your own EDI Ins as well, your own EDI In values. So going back to the 810, I'm sorry, the 850, and that for that one I'm going to go to a different trading partner to show the other option of using the EDI received DAC header info table. So I'm going to go to the 850 segments, and we're going to go to the detail level of the 850, the PO1 elements. And then the 17th element. Wait a minute here, PO1. Let's see here, just a second. Actually, I think I'm in the wrong trading partner. Okay, we want AMRG. Sorry about that. I'm gonna check the 850 for these guys, for this trading partner. Go into segments, PO1 elements, and the 17th element. Okay, so now, so we want to use this method. We bring the value that we're inbounding and sending back to them through a Navision table. So we're not really using it anywhere, but we're still storing it in this Lanham table that they gave us to use. So the origin would be Navision, and then the table name would be EDI received DAC line info. So that's one of your tables that you have to choose from in your list of tables. Now, if it's a header segment, you would choose EDI received DAC header info. If it's within the looping or the looping of the items on the document, you would choose EDI received DAC line info. Okay, and then once you choose that table, you have multiple fields to pull from, and they're basically just breaking it out kind of by the data type, like if it's a text field, a date field, depending on what type of information it is, you can choose that field. But whichever field you choose, that, like in this case, it's text field 2. On the outbound document, you want to choose the same table and the same field. So then that same value will be exported or sent back to them on either the 856 or the 810. So we can take a look at that quick. For AMRG, it's going to be on 856 document, segments, and it's in the LIN, which is a looping. Again, it's a looping segment, the looping of the lines, and the 05, the 5th element. So see here we have Navision, the same table, EDI received DAC line info, and then choosing the same field. So now when the 856 is sent, it's going to just basically send back the same value that they sent to us, and this is one way of doing it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my main menu there and bring back up the PowerPoint presentation. Okay, so that's that topic. The next one is, how do I bring an 850 element into more than one field on the sales order? So sometimes you receive one piece of data on 850, but you want to do maybe 2 or 3 things with it. Or it could be a conditional, like you want to do this or you want to do this. So it's not always a one-to-one situation. There could be multiple options there of what you want to do. So I will demo that for you. So for this, I'm going to go into a different trading partner. Let's see. Okay. And the documents. And so we'll go into the 850. So the conditionals, another thing is conditionals only apply to inbound documents. On the outbound, we don't use conditionals, but there is another way of kind of dealing with conditionals, but it's not this way that I'm going to be showing you. So on the 850, we'll go into segments, and then it's the DTM. And if we go into elements, there is a field that tells us whether a segment is conditional or not. It's called conditional, and it's a flow field. So notice on the second element here, it says conditional yes. So that tells me there are conditionals set up for this. So the DTM is a date segment, and O2 is where they're actually sending a date value. So we'll go into the conditionals and see how that's set up. The conditional segment is the DTM. The conditional element is the O1, so it's the element before the one that we're on. The conditional value is 001. So if they send a 001 in the first element of the DTM, this is what we want to do. We want to bring it into Navision, into the sales header table, into the cancel date field. But now if they send a 010 value in the first element of the DTM, we want to bring it into the shipment date field of the sales header table. So conditionals allow us to do this, and we can list as many as we want here. You can also, if you want to, like, let's say the value is 001, you could bring it into cancel date, and you could bring it into another date field. You would simply pretty much just repeat that same line with the new field that you want to import it into. And then, but in that case, you would need to choose a conditional sequence so that it knows which one to do first, and it kind of makes each record unique, so they're not, they're not exactly the same. So this would be a 1, and then the next line would be a 2. So I can show you real quick. It would be something like this. And then I'm going to just choose a different date field in here. And then I'm going to go back and make this one be a 1. Okay, so, and the conditional sequence isn't really a requirement if there's only one for that combination of these 3 fields. But so now if they send in a 001 in the DTM 01, it's going to populate the cancel date and the document date field with that date value that they're sending us. If it's a 010, it's going to populate the shipment date field in the sales header table. So that's a little bit on conditionals and how those are set up. Okay, let me bring back the PowerPoint back up for us. Okay, next. How do I see what values were imported on the 850 without viewing the text file? So sometimes when you view the text file, it's kind of, it's just a lot of raw data, and it's hard to kind of see the breakout of the segments and the elements, and because it's all just kind of together, on multiple lines, and looks kind of messy. So what you can do is you can use the list fields feature in Nav, and that's done from the received document. So it's pretty simple, and I can show you quickly how to do that here. So I'm going to go into processing and receive documents. And so basically any received document this will work on. We'll click on this, and you can do it either from the list form or the card form. If we click on list fields, it'll show a breakdown, you know, of all of the segments and the elements. So here's a segment, here's the element, and then the value of what's being imported. So this one, I'm not seeing a lot of value, so that's not a very good one to demo. Let me see if I can find maybe a better one here. Okay, we're seeing a few more values in there. What kind of document is that's 850? So I'm not sure why that is, but normally you would see all of your values that you're importing in there. Oh, I think that it could vary in which field it's showing in, depending on the data type, I guess. But so that's sometimes kind of useful, like if something's not working when you're mapping your documents and you don't, oh, here we go, the field text value is right here. Like if you're not really sure why something's not working, like to test the EDI Ins, for example, or the conditionals, sometimes it's useful to come into the list fields and see what value is actually imported and where it's being imported to. And then that can sometimes help you with debugging and figuring out what's going on or what's not set up correctly. So that's the list fields. Okay. Okay. One question that may be common is how do I resend an outbound document once an error was fixed? So that depends on if a change was made to the EDI maps. You may need to recreate the send document, and so anytime a change is made to the map, you'll need to recreate the whole send document and then resend it from the send document. Or you may be able to just simply resend it. So let me show you a little bit on that here. Okay, so if you'd make any change to the map at all, like the 856 or the 810 map, you pretty much, I think, always have to recreate the send document. So for the 856, that would be done from the bill of lading. So normally these send documents are created automatically, you know, like when the bill of lading is posted or the sales invoice is posted. But if you need to manually do it, this is how you would do it. So I'm going to go into post bill of lading. Okay, and then under navigate, or actually it's under actions, EDI send ASN. And then it'll say it was already generated on 9/7. Do you want to send it again? You say yes. And then it says EDI ASN send document created. And on the EDI tab, it shows you whether or not the ASN was sent yet or not. EDI ASN generated would be checked, and then EDI ASN gen date would be the last date that it was generated. So since actually I just sent it, so I would have thought that that would refresh. Maybe I need to. I think that this date would normally refresh every time you resend it. So that's how you recreate the 856. To recreate the 810, you would do it from the posted sales invoice. And it would have to be one that is an EDI invoice. So this one may or may not be, but where you would do that from is under Navigate, EDI, Send EDI Invoice. And it says EDI invoice has already been generated. Do you wish to send it again? And you say yes. Okay, and something to keep in mind with that is when you recreate the send document, it creates a send document, but it doesn't export it automatically. So you either need to go to the send document and export it, or if you have a job that exports the documents, it'll be done at that time. Or whenever you do the batch send of the export documents, it'll be included within that resend. But you can force a document to be exported by going to it. So if I go into pressing, send documents, and a good way to find those that you just created would be to filter on the created date of today, and then notice that the send date and the send time is blank because they weren't sent out yet, they weren't exported. So you could just click on the line and then export document, and then that'll export it out of your inbox. Okay. So remember, if a mapping change was made, you need to recreate the send document. If it's just that you need to resend it for whatever reason, then you can just go find the send document and re-export it. Or like another thing is, let me bring up nav again. Let's say that one of the values was wrong for whatever reason, and it's just like a one-time change. You can come into the send document and change the values here. So let's say that this should have actually been 40. You can just change it on here and then re-export it by clicking on export document, and then that'll send another send document to them, in this case an 810. Or another way would be to go and find the flat file, open that up, change it there, and then re-put it back in the outbox. So that's another way you can resend. Okay, so that covers that. All right, how do I send shipment information like the bill of lading number on the 810? So the thing is, in NAV, posted sales shipments and posted sales invoices are not really linked to each other. They're not linked to each other. I mean, they're both related to the sales order that was posted, but there's not really a direct link between the shipment and the invoice. So then, without doing these setups that I'm going to go over, you can't just reference shipment information on the 810 or on the invoice because it doesn't know what that is. There's no link between the two documents. But if you do need to include shipment information like the BOL number on the 810, there's just a little bit of a setup you need to do to allow that to happen. So first we need to link the posted shipment to the posted invoice, and setups are necessary. So let me show you what that setup is. Okay, so that would be set up on the packing rule. And each trading partner is assigned to a packing rule. And you can have one packing rule per trading partner, or you can share packing rules depending on, the difference. Like if the information in a packing rule applies to multiple trading partners, you can use that same packing rule for multiple. But if there's something that you need to change in a trading partner's packing rule, then you're better off creating a different one for them and then assigning that to them. So let's go into the Amazon packing rule. And that setup field I was talking about is on the bill of lading tab. And it's called shipment invoicing required. So you would check that on the packing rule if you want to force the shipment to be linked to the invoice so that you can reference the shipment information on the invoice or on the 810. And then once you check that on the packing rule, make sure that packing rule is assigned to the customer and to the ship to address for the trading partner that you're working with. Okay, and then once you do that, there are 4 ways of, well, I kind of missed a step. So then you would set up the map, the 856 map, or I'm sorry, the 810 map, to pull from the sales shipment table, like the BOL number. And then to create the invoice and the shipments so that they're linked, there's 4 ways. One would be from the sales order. Now, if you have like this customer is set up with that field check, shipment invoicing required, and you post the sales order without setting this up correctly, you'll receive an error message saying that you need to link them, basically. So the field that you would need to fill in is on the eShip tab, and invoice for bill of lading number needs to be populated. So before invoicing the sales order, you would need to choose the bill of lading number for the shipment that goes along with this so that it knows how to link them together. Now, if you would post this, it would, and you have that setup field checked, it would say invoice for bill of lading number needs to be populated. I think it's something like that it would say. So that's one way of linking them, is when you post the sales order, you'd have to fill in this field. The second way is from the posted sales shipment. So this would be for the first shipment that you posted, or any of the shipments that you posted for that sales order. You would go into it, and then under eShip, you would choose post shipment invoice. So that would be the second method. And then the third one would be from the bill of lading. Okay, so then here, let me just go into, I don't know if it's from the list card or not. I thought I saw it before, but I'm not seeing it now. But there's an option here to post the invoice from here. Maybe it's only from a posted. Let me check out posted bill of lading quick. Oh, here we go, post shipment invoices. So then you can set any filter that you need to, and then post the shipment invoice from the posted bill of lading. And then the last option of linking the shipment to the invoice would be by running the report from the EDI, or I'm sorry, the shipping and receiving shipping menu. There's a task called post shipment invoices. So then you set any filters here, and then this will allow you to do it kind of in a batch form. You don't have to do it like one at a time. You can do all of them that need to be done based on the filters that you have set here. So that that would be the fourth way. Looks like I froze that up there a little bit. Okay, so then bringing back up the PowerPoint. All right, so that's how you link the shipment to the invoice. There's just a little bit of setup involved there. All right, so I guess I'll turn it back over to Angie. See if can we see if we have any questions from anybody?
Thank you, Valerie. Yes, we do have a few questions that came through. How do I set up a cross-reference for shipping agent services?
Okay, that's a good question. Let me see. I can hopefully show a little bit there. So let's go into trading partners. Oops. So this is done from the trading partner level to start out with anyways. And as many of you probably know, there's different cross-references you can set up. There's item cross-references, there's customer cross-references. Those are probably the two main common ones that are used. But then there's also a general cross-reference area that will allow us to set up some of those other areas like that was in that question. So the cross-reference type, let me see. Well, I'm going to see if there's any that are set up in here that I can maybe demo a little better here. Okay, yeah, it looks like we do have some that are set up with the eShip agent like this. I'm going to go to the trading partner and we'll go from there. So then if we go into general cross-references, okay, so the cross-reference type, you have different options that you can use there. Notice that there's different options that you can choose from, like this. So we're, in this case, more interested in these couple right here, shipping agent code and shipping agent service. There's one for the sales header and one for the transfer header, so we'd want to make sure we choose the one for the sales header probably. And then the nav table name, I think that gets auto-populated. So then the EDI value is the value that's imported on the 850 document, the one that they're sending to us. And then the nav value is how we want to interpret that. So if they send next day, we want it to bring into the shipping agent of UPSN and the eShip agent service of next day. And nav value 2 of next day. So it's our way of cross-referencing this value with how we want it to bring in, because you might not have an eShip agent service with the same name, so you can make it be what it needs to be here, and then when you import that document, it will do that translation or that cross-reference for you to bring in the right value. So then on your map, you would, let me see if we can find how that's set up on the map. So that would be probably under carrier details, and if we go into elements, and it looks like there's a conditional on this third element here. So then you would bring it into Navision sales header shipping agent code, Navision sales header eShip agent service. So it would bring it into those two fields, but nav would know to use that general cross-reference table that you had set up to not bring in the value that they sent, but to do the cross-reference and use the values that are in those nav fields that you put in there. All right. Are there any other questions?
Thank you, Valerie. Yes. Can an EDI In be used to override a value in nav?
No. Well, no. Because it's two separate things. An EDI In is kind of stored in its own variable. So you could do both. You could bring it into an EDI In and into a nav field, but an EDI In won't ever overwrite a field value, because that's not what it does. It just stores it into a kind of a holding place. It doesn't ever overwrite anything. So hopefully that answers that question.
Okay, thank you. And if a trading partner wants me to send 1-810 for multiple shipments, is this possible?
Yes, it is. So Lanham does have a way that you can combine shipments into one invoice, and there are some setups involved with that as well. So then when the invoice is created, it shows all the information from each individual shipment on it, and it's listed on the invoice, but then it just creates one invoice document and therefore 1/810. So that is very possible, and Lanham has some documentation on that. So if you are interested in that, you can let me know, and I can send you that documentation from Lanham on the exact setups required for that.
Okay, thank you. And when there is an error on a receive or send document, how do I find where the error is?
Okay, let me show you. So let's start out with like a received document. So processing, well, and one thing is don't forget about your document status, because that'll show, like your receive docs with errors, or send docs with errors. So you kind of need to monitor those. But to find where the specific error is at, let me go into the receive documents. And let me see if I can find one that has one. Okay, so this one has a data error. So if we go into view, okay, so the data error, this is showing at the header level, but if I want to find out which segment or element is causing it, I don't think it shows at the list fields data error here, but let me double check. There is an error description. I guess I think on the inbound, I think the best way to find out where the error is just to rerun like the process receive document, and then it'll tell you the error there, and that'll narrow it down to where you need to go. It'll usually say something more specifically as to where it is, where the error is. I think the send document is actually a little more clear. Send documents. Let's see if we can find one with an error. Documents. Okay, data error. I guess I could filter on. I'm going to go back to the list and filter on that field, data error. Might take just a little bit here to run that filter. Maybe it'll take a little longer than I thought it would, but let's see. I don't know if it's going to let me open another instance. That's what I'm trying to do. I already do that. Okay, well let me show you without actually seeing one. Well, let's say this had a data error yes here. This is actually a full field, so it knows, like, if any of these lines down here have data error checked, this will say yes. So let's say that this one was checked as data error. So then we go into the, what am I thinking here? Send documents. Oh, yeah, never mind. So it would show you specifically which ones are airing out. So then you have to look and see what it is. Sometimes it might be because an element has a minimum field length and it might not fit the requirement. So it might be something like that. Or I can't think of anything else. But just remember that if it shows data error at the document level on a send document, you can go with the lines, and it also shows a check mark in the lines which ones are airing out. And then once you fix it, then you can uncheck that field. And then if that's the only one, then this should change to data error of no. And then you should be able to re-export it once you get that fixed. And if you don't, and this is still an error, then you click on export document. It should give you the error or some sort of error on where it's causing you to have problems. All right, are there any other questions?
We have one last question, Valerie. Thank you. How do I know if I need to set up a new EDI template for a trading partner?
Okay, I think often people have like a generic template that they use that they are able to use for multiple trading partners, because you don't really have to set up one for each trading partner unless they each have very unique requirements. But if it works to use one that you have, I would suggest doing that. But sometimes you run into in a situation where you're trying to set something up for them where it requires a change to a template, and instead of making a change to an existing template and then breaking the functionality for somebody else that's using that template, you're better off setting up a new one and then making the change to the template and then assigning that new template to the trading or to the customer and to the ship to address. So I think that's probably key there is anytime that you know you have to do something different for a specific customer that doesn't necessarily apply to anybody else, then that would be a time to set up a new one and then make those changes. And let me just show you quickly too, like kind of what types of fields are on the EDI template or are at the template level. So any differences in any types of these things would be what would apply. So file format is one of them. I mean, I think that's usually pretty standard, but some, like it's X12 delimited, but there are different ways of sending the flat file or receiving it. So if you have a trading partner that has a different requirement, that would be one difference. There's some outbound setups. Like if any of these would be pertaining to a specific customer only, then that's when you'd want to have a different template. Another thing too is, so in the file format you have this path of where you inbound and outbound the documents to, and you can import them and export them out of kind of a general place or a general folder, so all of your different customers go into the same folder. But if you want to keep them separate, where each trading partner goes into its own separate folder, I mean, of course, you need to communicate that with your van so that they know where to pick up and send to. But if you actually have it set up so that each customer or a customer has a different path, then that would be a reason that they'd have a different template. And then that template would be assigned to that trading partner only because they'd be the only ones going into that specialized folder. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yes, I believe so. Thank you very much. If anyone has any further questions that you would like to ask Valerie, you may do so now, or if you want to give her a contact, you're free to do so. And I just want to thank Valerie for presenting today, and to everyone on today's call, or if you're watching on demand, thank you for joining us. And just to let you know, we do have a few more webinars coming soon. Tomorrow, we have Sana Commerce presenting on 7 e-commerce best practices to meet your B2B buyers' demands. And also tomorrow in the afternoon, we have Richard Pedigo from Calumo. He's going to be presenting on making BI easy and practical. So if you're interested in any of those webinars or our future webinars, please check out our website at innovia.com/events. And I also want to mention that we have our new podcast going on. It's called the Innovia Conversation, and you can find out about all the different podcast platforms to listen to on our podcast page, and that's innovia.com/podcast. So check out the selection and subscribe to get notified on all the new episodes that air. And Innovia is proud to be a platinum sponsor of BCUG NAVUG Summit in Orlando, Florida this year. The conference is fast approaching, October 13th through the 18th. If you haven't already registered or if you want more information about Summit, check out our conference page on our website, and that's innovia.com/conferences. All right, well, thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on another Innovia webinar. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you, Valerie.